Okay, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor and pleasure to welcome you all tonight at this event within the series of Al-Furqan London events, Al-Furqan London lectures that we do every now and again. It's interesting that this lecture tonight is sort of fits within a continuation of a topic that we started at least in the last couple of months since last year, pours into the topic of Islamic art and architecture. Obviously different, tackling this topic from different aspects, especially within the framework of the Islamic art and architecture, its global reach and influence. We are very honored and delighted to have with us tonight two respected guest speakers. They will take us tonight on a virtual artistic journey, two separate ones on the topic of Islamic art and its impact into different cultures, but tonight mainly Islamic art's impact in in Europe, with a focus on the Islamic art that has been implemented sort of in the manuscript world, within the manuscript binding and more, hopefully. That will be by Professor Claus-Peter Haase, and obviously later on I will introduce both of the keynote speakers, and then we'll move to a long journey to China. We have our second guest speaker tonight talking to us about the Islamic art impact in the so-called Sini script, so the Arabic and Islamic calligraphy and its impact in the Chinese provenience. Before I give the floor to our keynote speaker, I'm delighted to invite our chairman, Mr. Sharaf Ahmed Zaki-Amani, to welcome you, say a few words, and then I will be presenting the keynote speaker. So please, Sharaf, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sally. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished scholars and dear friends, good evening and welcome to the Al-Furqan Islamic Heritage Foundation. It is a pleasure to see so many colleagues, researchers, old friends gathered with us this evening to attend two lectures really that speaks to the heart of what we do here in the foundation. At Al-Furqan, our work is guided by a simple but important conviction that the intellectual and artistic heritage of the Islamic world forms an essential part of the broader history of human civilization. For almost 4 decades, the foundation has worked to preserve, to study, to promote, to bring to light the rich written heritage through our publications, our manuscript studies and cataloging efforts, and our public lectures as we have tonight. In doing so, we are constantly reminded that the knowledge that we seek, that we see, does not develop in isolation. It travels across regions, across languages and cultures. And when we look closely at manuscripts and books, we begin to see traces of exchanges that connect societies far beyond its origins. The heritage we study reflects a civilization whose intellectual and artistic influence extend widely, from China in the east to Europe in the west and many, many regions in between. Manuscripts, calligraphy, and book arts are amongst the quiet vehicles through which these exchanges unfolded. We are also reminded that the history of civilization is not a one-way story. Islamic scholarship itself grew in conversations with earlier civilizations, absorbing knowledge from Greek, Persian, Chinese, and Indian traditions, and those ideas were studied, expanded, and refined, and in time traveled outward, shaping other societies in return. When we study history carefully, we begin to see the constant ebb and flow of knowledge across generations and cultures. It is through this ongoing exchange that human civilizations flourish and advances. Each society builds upon what came before and contributing something new to what follows. This evening's lecture offers two small glimpses of that great exchange of civilizations, one looking westward to the influence of Islamic book arts in Europe, and the other eastward to the remarkable tradition of Arabic writings that flourished in China. We are therefore extremely honored to host Professor Claus-Peter Haase and Dr. Shunhua Jin this evening, and grateful for them to share with us their lifelong work. Again, thank you all for being with us. I wish you all a rich and enjoyable evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chef, for these splendid words. So without further ado, just a brief intro. So as it was mentioned, the impact of Islamic art in Europe and China reflects the centuries of cultural exchange driven by trade, diplomacy, and intellectual contact. Through routes such as the Mediterranean networks and Silk Road, Islamic artistic styles characterized by intricate geometric patterns, calligraphy, and Arabesque designs found their way into European and Chinese visual cultures, and more. In Europe, these influences appeared in architecture, textiles, and decorative arts, particularly during periods of close contact, like medieval Spain and the Crusades as well. In China, Islamic art blended with local traditions, shaping ceramics, metalworks, and mosque architecture, etc. And this cross-cultural interaction not only enriched the artistic expression, but it also demonstrated the interconnectedness of diverse civilizations. Therefore, it's a great, as I mentioned, a great opportunity tonight that we will look at these two different cultures, but with their similarities and specifics as well. Before I give the floor to our first keynote speaker, he usually insists of me calling him Klaus, but I insist to call him Professor Claus-Peter Haase. Just a brief overview about him. So, Claus-Peter Haase was promoted in the year 1972 at the University of Hamburg, dissertation on the regional history of Umayyad Syria. After studies of Islamic art and history, he sort of went into the classical archaeology, ancient Near East at Hamburg University, Roma La Sapienza Gregoriana, and Istanbul Universitesi. He was an assistant and lecturer at the Oriental Institute at the Bochum and Kiel University in Germany between 1972 and 1984. He was a member of the Cataloging of Oriental Manuscripts in Germany, Academy of Göttingen in 1985-1998. Director of archaeological excavations in early Islamic Medinat al-Far, as it's called, Hisn al-Maslama in Syria, Raqqa province, which is interesting to know. After all what happened in Syria, hopefully most of that survived, between 1987 and 2001. Professor of Islamic Art and Archaeology, University of Copenhagen, 1998-2001. And most importantly, probably, he was director of the Museum of Islamic Art in Berlin, Islamische Kunstmuseum in Berlin between 2001 and 2009. And he is, for the moment, honorary professor of Islamic art and archaeology, Freie Universität Berlin, since 2004. Professor Haase has a long list of contributions, published contributions, books and articles, but you can see his diverse background. He has published a couple of books, as I mentioned, many articles on various aspects of Islamic heritage and art, but his latest contribution includes a catalog under the title Die Orientalischen Handschriften der Universitätsbibliothek Kiel, which is expected, or is in print for the moment, so expect it soon. Well, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Professor Claus-Peter Haase to address this distinguished audience. Thank you. Please.
Astaghfirullah. Thank you very much, esteemed trustee, directors, and dear guests of the Furqan. By inviting one of the oldest and one of the youngest researchers in the fields, I think Saleh has somehow shown his ability to be aware of the balance between subjects, persons, and so on. And of course, the balance is one of the main subjects also of my contribution today. It is this what in the European arts has always met with certain difficulties and reservations against it. But we'll see what came out of it. I try to define it in 3 chapters. It has a longish introduction for recalling to you the common heritage to which Saleh was also pointing out now of the European cultures and the Islamic cultures to antiquity. And it is very strange to see that somehow the display and the design of covers of books resemble, if you look not so closely, but more in a distant way to the objects. Now, the look at objects, this is what I try to train with students for over 60 years by now, and it is the most difficult part to refrain the students from interpreting and telling what they find in the subject before looking at it and before defining what is really represented by the artists. The other subject I want to tackle, which I would not always speak about, but you will notice it, is who is responsible for changes in style and in the outlook of art. We know every spring one needs a new costume, a new way of garderobe, and so one needs to change the style a little bit. But who is really responsible in such important things as the cover, the binding of holy and not so holy books? This is, of course, also another preference of mine, to look for rare things which are somehow endangered. And unfortunately, covers of books, as you might know, are the first things which are destroyed when books are delivered and inherited and so on. The new owner wants to have his library looking all the same, in white parchment in the Middle Ages, later in black leather, and so on and so on. You know that. So the original covers are very rare, and they are very fragile. They are constantly refurbished, remade. For example, a very luxurious binding, like the Gospel on the left hand, of course, some variable stones on the side. Well, the church was in need of money. They sold the stones and put glass, colored glass, into the things, and so on and so on. The material is another subject which one also has to reproduce or preserve or restore, something like that. Very difficult things. The Museum of Islamic Art has a collection of 40 very valuable, actually Mamluk covers, which are completely worthless because a restoration specialist has mistreated them so that one cannot show them anymore. So things happen to the manuscripts. Now, what you see in a typical way, but in a different design, is what the 2 most often copied styles show. A central field, which is in a way framed by luxurious or not so luxurious other frames and bordures and lines, and The second possibility is an overall design, where you don't have a real center, but you see a connection either in lines or in bands. This is a difference. The line is quite free. The band is always somehow forced to stay together and to give the impression of a network on the cover. The ivory psalter, very famous psalter, here in the British Library, is one of the most precious objects. It's probably a Byzantine work, of which even fewer real originals are preserved, and it shows the tradition of an antique book design. The Islamic side is also beginning with unfortunately no cover, but the first page, the frontispiece of a manuscript, of a very famous manuscript of Dioscorides, De Materia Medica. No, this is the pharmacology, shows the central field and four lined outlines. You have the four friezes in the late antique Byzantine ivory cover of a document with a central field, probably the Emperor Justinian, and mythical scenes framing it. The resemblance is somehow stupefying, and it's really impressive to see that for centuries this design was somehow valid and unchanged, but filled with new content, of course, with quite different meaning. Let us have another look into the same manuscript. The first chapter, so to speak, is introduced by a central medallion and framed only on top and below, but pointed out at the margin by what sometimes even looks like a hand or so, that obviously the center is pointed out at the margin. Please look here first before you study. Now for the art of a very special period. I don't want to continue with the early beginnings, but to concentrate on an art of a period which you would not really normally call a very prospering period. This is the Mongol Ilkhanid Empire of Iran and Central Asia, where the historians tell us dreadful stories about mistreating hundreds of thousands of warriors marauding in the countries and so on. At the same time, it is the most impressive new age of the arts, especially the arts of the book, but also in architecture, religious architecture, and the private palaces, and so on. It is an astonishing fact that one of the most dreadful regimes for human resorts is at the same time inciting for the artists a new liberation of their ideas, of their the impacts on the society, on the sponsors, and really bouleversing everything. Also, even in calligraphy. This is so strange that the Arabic script, which we know was defined over the centuries by certain famous calligraphers, had its peak, obviously, in the late Abbasid Caliphate period, but of that nothing is preserved. Whereas from the Mongol destructive period, a lot is preserved and is showing probably the outcome of what the Abbasids had laid out in the fundaments, and what was now developed. Just take the example of famous pupil of Yakut, the famous Abbasid calligrapher on the left, with his muhakkak, a species of muhakkak. It's not quite what we think it is. And what I can show you, if I understand this, is what the pupils of Yakut have done is the correct placement of letters always at the same distance, at a measured distance, in the height, in the distance between letter groups and the words, without difference of words and letter groups, the al-khat al-mansub, which is a term usually not used in modern definitions of calligraphy, but one remembers distantly that this was a new idea behind it. Before, in beautiful Kufi and other Muhakkak and other scripts, they did not look into the regulation of the distances, perhaps sometimes with the words and especially with the block text block. This was regarded, but not the distance of letters and the proportions of the letters. Now this is what we learn from looking at it, because the decisive tract by Yaqut or one of his pupils is not preserved. The al-Khat al-Mansub is never defined. And it was a colleague from us here in London, or he's living in Munich, Bora Keskiner, who recently has found some evidence for this special calligraphy. On the right is another example in the same way. Now, the effect of this liberation of the artistic practice was spreading. And this is why I point out the Khanid Mongol period so energetically to you, because it spreads out not only to the other religious communities in the East, Christian, Jewish, and here in the example of an Armenian manuscript and of Eastern Christian Orthodox manuscript. And you notice certain details of the so-called Ilkhanid style, for example, in this strange way of hooks or horns, which you will repeatedly see in a minute in other ornaments of the Ilkhanid and the later periods. This continues to be used and is one of the new motives in Mongolian art. Now for the training of artists and for what I was hinting at when I asked for the impact of the artist on society and on the style of the period. How is it with the sponsors? The sponsor is usually a prince or a rich person paying for several artists to work for him and create his library and so on. We have one representation which shows the most important part. It's in the center, Sultan Hossein Baykara, the Timurid prince, ruler of Herat at that time. The author is handing his finished book to him from the door. Another chap is preparing the next book. He is the most important artist. He is the designer who gives the regulation of the page. Where is the text to come? Where are the illuminations? Then comes the painter. He is doing the illuminations. And at the end, someone is having a accomplished cover of a book next to him and gives the last chance to it. This is the atelier for the whole production of arts at a court, because the ideas come from this special atelier between painters and illuminators and designers, and they give their ideas to carpet makers, ceramic producers and others. Carpet makers, one has even called the often appearing first decorations of a manuscript, 2 pages as a frontispiece, as the carpet pages. And you see here the example where an overall design is spread over 2 pages with the handles pointing out to the center where there is nothing to be seen here, but it will soon appear again. And some of the highlights in the Ilkhanid period, at the end of the Mongol period, you see in famous book covers in gold with the typical series of ornament. Now comes the example spreading outside the Mongol Empire into Mamluk Empire, the real political enemies of the Ilkhanids. What do they produce suddenly? For the first time, centralized ornaments with angles, and next to it, as a record of the tradition, the geometric devices they had done before as well. Alison Orta has specialized in observing what is the real news about Mamluk book covers. It is one of the most exciting arts, because they even had new techniques in cutting out leather. And this is very impractical to have a leather filigree on the outer cover. It's rarely preserved and, of course, very weak. So some of the examples are in the Berlin collection before the restoration. This is one of the examples. And suddenly, new waves of Iranian ideas come into Egypt and are produced in leather examples of covers at the end of the 15th century. Even the first pages, the frontispieces, are being painted with Iranian motifs. And the Iranian art of the period shows one of the great ideas about the balanced design of a cover. I'll just take this example, it's the main example to define it. This means that the parts of the design with detailed ornament are defined by the medallion or mandorla in the center and by angles. This is actually only the second motive. When you piece them together, the four angles, into a cross-like form, you have a cross form, and you can say, oh well, we have a sequence of normal Islamic ornament, cross, mandala, cross, mandala, cross, mandala, endless in alternating shapes. Now the new effect of this was that the empty spaces we just saw are somehow in a wonderful balance to the ornamented spaces. The very dense ornament and much more space is free, because this is in a well-balanced content. Here you have less dense elements in the center and the corners, and the space is a little bit less free, and this is so well balanced that for the whole of the next pictures you will notice, that's somehow well done, and that is perhaps on the way. Perhaps they will learn about it. You already see my point in the whole impact of what the Iranians have done, and how they treat with it, even with the dense ornament in the gold, how they sent this as an idea to the early Ottoman book covers, and where you see that the Ottomans used this in a more strict form and were even able to leave more of the covers free. This daring freedom of the empty fields, you will notice in some examples, which are really impressive. We have to hurry up. The workshop, the atelier at the court of Sultan Suleiman, for example, produces manuscripts in a great quantity, and you see that as well as the covers, also the front sides get a new outlook. Now comes the second point of my presentation, the transmission into the West. I start the other way around with an Ottoman atelier using Italian velvets to place them outside and inside of books. Outside very impractical, because the velvet is worn off and doesn't look nice after two openings. So it's better to keep it in the cupboard somewhere or under glass, but not to use it. For a long time, one thought it was Ottoman velvet. It's not. It's mostly from Florence or Lucca even, and very nicely done. Now comes the further step into Europe. And when you think of what has happened here between the pig skin of medieval appearance on a theological tract, only half of the cover is ornamented, the rest is in the wooden block, and an Ottoman goat skin with an Ottoman medallion without golden gilding. And in addition to that, quite out of place, a Venetian stamp saying this is now in Venice. It's kept in Bologna University. And you see many paintings in Italy, from Naples to the north, presenting Islamic book covers. Here, down here is another one, here, and I think 4 altogether in a theological demonstration, St. Hieronymus in his studio. Of course he doesn't read Islamic books, but he uses the Islamic design for his theological Christian tracts. And I think this is what we could call, you might say, a soft power impact of Islam on the European states, and I think that is the better way of impressing the neighboring culture than to try to make it politically. The instruments. They were obviously, according to recent research, in an added progressive modernization. Not only the stamps, and on the right the Islamic brass ornaments heated and pressed into leather, but a European instrument which was allowing for a rolling ornament. The same motif were rolled into the leather also in a heated way, and probably in a heated way, and gilded or not gilded later on. Then the main difference, which remains for all the periods, is that Islamic books at the back have been glued the covers directly to the back binding, whereas in Europe they stick to an extra how do you say, this is hiding stitching of the quires in the back cover, never in the Ottoman and Arabic book covers. The ornament collections. As well in the Ottoman ateliers, they were collecting motifs for spreading also to the bookmakers, as in Western next one. As in Western publications, especially grammars of ornament. One of the most important is this, unfortunately not well known, Peter Flötner, with his single leaves of ornaments in the Moresco ornament. Alison Orte has found in Alla Islamica, but you don't give a quotation for that. I can't find the name Alla Islamica in these grammars of ornament.
It's a Hobson term. It's Anthony Hobson's term.
Yeah, it's a Hobson term. He is not always very exact in his denominations. I haven't found it. But a la Moresca, or al Moresco in Spanish, and Arabesco, these are terms which are really appearing also under the ornaments, and the design is used into the 19th century, as you see, or in British encyclopedias of ornament. There are pages showing mainly, not always well systematically grouped Islamic ornaments. We looked for recently found group of covers, book covers, which are nearly exact copies of Islamic book bindings. This is a short period in the 15th century, the second half of the 15th century and beginning of the 16th, 15th to 16th century. There are few examples of exact copies of book cover ornaments, and one group has been published already around 1900, but it was not recognized as Venice made covers. This is evident from historical documents, naming one merchant, Peter Ugelheimer, who had a trade house in Venice, and obviously had some bookbinders working for him in the Islamic style. Hobson thought this is, Hobson is the main authoritative book on this, thought this is all Ottoman design. We are not so sure anymore, since Andrea Lerma has found some designs. These are two very interesting book covers with filigree on the outside of the cover also in Gotha, in the palace collection of Gotha, with an overall design in nearly exact copies. Even in the 15th century, some exact copies of what you have already seen quite often, and even with the intention of showing we can do it the same way as the Ottomans. The documents of the Doge for treatises and piece arrangements are in covers in Ottoman style, as you see from the back, with European binding. And exact copies of Iranian style exist also, and this was obviously the idea of Andrea Lerma, that probably the interest, the political interest behind the Ottoman Empire as the main political adversary would be the Turkmen Akoyunlu in Tabriz in Iran. I'm not so sure that this is Tabriz, I don't think so. It could also be Ottoman. Let us come to some of the examples where Venice or Florence cover looks nearly the same way as an Arabic cover, probably, in the Ottoman provinces, Syria or so. Both are not really to the best of the balance between the free fields and the ornamented fields. And what the German bookbinders do then, with the idea of a central important piece and frames, you can see in two opposite examples, a simple one and a more delicate one in French manner. None of them manages the treatment of the empty space as a counterweight to the ornamented pieces, but the way how the lines and the bands are arranged, this is very much copying Islamic predecessors. Also the colors, but they are technically done differently. In enamel colors, this is not an Islamic idea. And here you have in a late example in Catholic Bavarian bookbinding, the Mongol horns still springing up from Ilkhanid period. And some of the more typical and for long period used design of a sort of three-dimensional visualization of the cover, and some very rich designs in the Venice ateliers for the Aldus on the right printing, in the Frankfurt bookshop even in the 17th century, much too dense and not balanced, and sometimes becoming more and more developed into new forms, but with remembrances of the Arabic and Islamic knotted designs. Baroque examples, and now the answer of the Ottomans to the European Baroque. You see nearly the same design of the three-dimensional, but with a European centerpiece taken from a European book of or collection of ornaments. And then the Ottoman book art even tries to cope with new elements in European design in the 19th century, in historicist ideas, and it comes more and more to an exchange, but with a typical Ottoman sense for order and for placement of this rich design in the front space. What is this? What is this impact? If we look into one of the most exciting finds, two of the most exciting finds in the book art, from a Coptic volume, probably 7th to 8th century, a filigrane cover found probably in Fustat, and in a Manichaean book trove in Central Asia, in Turfan, during the Prussian commission to Turfan, they found a Manichaean book in Central Asia with a similar filigree. What does this mean? Is this a global art for a while, and has it spread over centuries in the Islamic and in the European world? I'm wondering. Now, the Manichaeans in Central Asia often came from Egypt. They may have transported this. And, well, the idea is that artists usually know about new ideas very quickly. You don't need a Paris catwalk for spreading a new style to the public. It can easily be done by some merchant, by some person who carries a little sketchbook or a little information. It doesn't even need the object. We wouldn't call it global art, but it is the idea that we could all try and achieve a new style in many cultures at the same period and lasting. So it becomes sometimes funny. Or the end, you see a sort of misunderstanding. Now nothing of a balance is left, but you see until the 19th century in European book covers, even nowadays, the idea of some remembrance of Islam, or even in the Ottoman, remembrance of European motives appearing far too big in the centerpieces, and not only for describing Egypt, but also for their own German mythology, they still use the Islamic designs. Until today, when you buy empty notebooks for writing with your hands, Islamic design in European disguise in the airports and in Turkish publications today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Claus-Peter Haase, for this very interesting presentation, very enlightening one. Obviously, we'll have Professor Peter Klaus joining the podium later on in the discussion part. Now it's a turn for the second keynote speaker. Before I invite Dr. Shunhua Jin, I just give an overview. Shunhua Jin is an Alexander von Humboldt postdoctoral fellow at the Museum für Islamische Kunst, Staatliche Museum zu Berlin, 2024-2026. She earned her PhD from Fudan University in China in 2022, after which she undertook a postdoctoral fellowship at the Asian Research Institute at Aix-Marseille University in France, 2022-2023. Her research explores the multifaceted exchanges between China and the Islamic world, with a focus on the material culture, architectural traditions and intellectual networks of Chinese Muslims, by examining the synthesis of Islamic and Chinese aesthetic forms. She traces the historical trajectories and integration into broader global networks. Her recent articles include the transformation of domes in medieval Chinese mosques from immigrant Muslims to local followers, open archaeology, depicting the holy cities, study on the 19th century Chinese Islamic pilgrimage scroll, Journal of Material Cultures in the Muslim World, dome or wooden ceiling, trajectories of acculturation in Chinese mosques, and the calligraphic hand in Perso-Arabic manuscripts from China, a Takhmis al-Burda in Leiden. We had a long discussion with Shunhua. She had a very interesting approach on the history of pilgrims from China and all the objects, but because we wanted to bring the two subjects together, she kindly agreed. She will speak to us tonight about Arabic writings in China, the birth of the so-called Sini Scripts, and contemporary practice. The floor is yours, Shunhua, so please join me in welcoming Shunhua.
Thank you very much for your such a kind introduction, and I'm really honored to be here to share my research, and thank you very much for Mr. Sharaf and Mr. Sali, and I was really enjoy this event and such a nice topic to talk about the impact of Islamic culture in Europe and China, and especially for because I'm a Chinese, so because this topic on Islamic art in China is not so much to be discussed in the field, and not so many people know about it, and so I'm very happy I have this chance to share with this topic I'm researching with you, and today I choose the topic Arabic writings in China. I'm not talking about only one material, but basically I'm going to talk about the calligraphy, the writing. So we have so many interesting aspects we can explore under the topic Islamic art in China, like objects exchange between China and the Islamic world, or architecture, how it transformed in China, and to be focused, so I will introduce one step by step, and to make us getting to this topic. Here I put an image which shows a mosque in China, in Tianjin. Tianjin is a city very close to Beijing in North China, and it's a home of several historical mosques, and they preserve many contemporary artwork of Arabic calligraphy, like what we see here. We can see the two vertical banners of Arabic calligraphy around next to the arched door, and also another, and they are framed, and they are written in paper and framed in a way like Chinese paintings and calligraphy, like what we see the traditional frame, and also another calligraphy written in ink is making a wooden plaque on top of this door. And then if we go inside this arched door, we can see a mihrab in the end of the room, and with the columns, again with Arabic calligraphy next to it, and in the center of the mihrab, we can see a designed Arabic calligraphy. So this kind of very curvilinear way to write the Arabic scripts, like many people call it Sini calligraphy. And however, Sini calligraphy has a longer tradition and more broader sources to beside what we see here. And for me, Sini, this word is aesthetical word. If it's really connecting to a Chinese official culture, or Sini is like a geographical word, like what we call Maghribi. So Sini is more like what we revert to Chinese, like the Arabic word al-Sin. Yeah. So and also for all this, we have first question: when did Arabic writing appear in China? When this Muslim community emerged in China? And so I would like to show you very early evidence of that. And the city, I put the dot in the map, is Quanzhou. Quanzhou is a port city in southeastern China. And a large amount of tombstones were first discovered there. And this is earliest evidence of Arabic writings in China. And Quanzhou is referred as Saitun in the Arabic sources for this city. And this important city has been visited by many great travelers like Marco Polo and Ibn Battuta. And scholars find at least more than 300 tombstones bears Arabic writings. Now, most of them preserved in Quanzhou Maritime Museum. Like what we see here is a picture taken from the museum. And we can see so many different diversity of writing styles on this epigraphy. And the oldest datable tombstone belonged to Hossein bin Muhammad and dated to the 567 Hijri date. However, the majority of the tombstones there are dated to 13th and 14th century. And we can already observe from the several pictures I put here. And these stones display some local elements, such as the arched frame. It's come from Indian architecture. And this decorative motif, including the clouds and like lotus flowers on the bottom of the tombstone there. And the carving technique, including both incised and relief carving. And several tombstones also features Chinese characters together with Arabic letters. And this tombstone suggests that Quanzhou, the city, had a relatively large Muslim community. And a highly distinctive script we find in the epigraphy there. It is like what I show left side, and it's intensively use ligatures and curved lines, and a similar script appear on a Mongol period Quran which attribute to China in a Christie auction catalog. And we can see the how they write basmala here with very curved lines and connected letters, like what we find in the epigraphy in Quanzhou in such a coastline in China. And this Quran was copied by Muhammad Al-Bukhari in the early 14th century, and so now we see this early Quran case which connected to China, but we didn't see his name is Al-Sini. The name is still Al-Bukhari, and the nisba is still attributed to Bukhari, so it's connected to Central Asia. Quanzhou is also a home of one of the earliest example of mosque architecture in China. The Ashab Mosque in Quanzhou is dated back to 1010 CE. And the remaining structure we see here now is not used, but is a part of UNESCO heritage there now. And it was built with granite and was restored in 1310. And this site we can see many Arabic inscriptions, like the Quranic verses carved in Sulus calligraphy on the Qibla wall. And not only in southeastern China we find Arabic inscriptions, and also two examples also found in Beijing, two 13th century tombstones now preserved in the New Jie Mosque in Beijing. And it was dated in 30th century. And we also can find the calligraphy on these two tombstones in Beijing, also with strong curvilinear strokes and numerous ligatures. And one of them, again with a Nisba Buhari, is another one doesn't bear a name, but another tombstone with this name. And indicating the person was associated with Buhara. And another similar writing style can be found in a manuscript now in Paris. But this manuscript is an Islamic astronomical work dated to 14th century. It was dedicated to a Mongol princess, but it's written by a scholar from Samarkand. And this scholar later moved to China. And this Mongol prince at that time was a ruler of Tibet. So it's a very complicated geographical item of this manuscript. But we can see how exchange can happen in the Mongol period and how many Muslims immigrate to China from Central Asia at that moment. And they also presented astrology and astronomy books to the rulers inside China, inside nowadays China. And all this evidence show that we can see many different writings already. Such earlier can be dated to 11th century to China, and they are different in different writings. And the writers are not necessarily Chinese, and many can come from outside China and bring this knowledge to China and these writings. And I want to show this because I find the similarity of the circulinear writings between the epigraphy and the manuscript. And why I show the epigraphy material first, because it's made of stone, so obviously it's easier to be well preserved than the book, than the manuscript. So, but besides the epigraphy and manuscript, Islamic manuscript, especially Quranic manuscript, also largely copied in China, and it's a distinctive category. Are going to waited to be studied more among all the Islamic manuscript tradition in the Islamic world, and Quran copied in China, sometimes also called by scholars Chinese Quran. Can have several distinctive features, including their writings, the binding techniques, decoration and illumination, and as well as the use of paper and the color. And but today I'm more focused on to recognize a Chinese Quran, we need to judge all from these different aspects. But because today I'm talking about the writing, so I'm going to more focus on the writing. So we can see this is a picture taken, put here is show how a Quran, the 30-volume Quran, a kind of this type of 30 volume, 13 jaws of Quran is one of the most common Quran. Now we find this the Quran copied in China. And for this picture, we already can see the opening pieces is highly decorated and illuminated, and usually with 3 lines of writing. And other pages are written in 5 lines or 7 lines. And give another example to see. This example, maybe you know, it is preserved in the British Library, and display elaborate and visually striking illumination. And it's very interesting thing is this the lantern formed this form of the shape of the box, the shape of the decoration is looks like a lantern. So. And also, if we notice the writing of the Arabic, it's very noticeable with the sublinear elongations. But I will discuss this kind of calligraphy more later. And I want so there's 2 type of there are many many different Quranic manuscript copied in China, but the two of them are more distinguished. One is this one volume Quran format. So this format is copied only in one volume, and this example I show here is not like the one with Nisba al-Bukhari. This person who copied this Quran is called his name is Kiwan ad-Din bin Ahmad al-Sini. So it's suggesting that the person identify himself as an original from China. And it was copied in 1498. And the opening page I show here is decorated with a strong contrasting red, green, and yellow color, accompanied with ornamental motifs such as cloud pattern on the four corners of page, which reflects the color and the decoration of Chinese book art in Ming Dynasty. And the main text is written in a relatively small script. It's a bit difficult to categorize it. If you call it Nasr, it still have something different from Nasr, but it still have some features like the sublinear stroke are flattened, and the tail of the Ming is elongated, and the eye of Ha is widely open. And the very interesting of writing is ornament part. The ornament part is arranged in a frame composed with Chinese decorative patterns like this. Here's a lotus, and the script are designed to be fitting in a secular or semi-secular pattern. So that's why sometimes the letters are not fully connected because they want to design it into the shape. Like the word Maknun I put in, you can see the word is not connected, and also to see how they design the aleph is very creative. They put the aleph slipped into two parts resembling like a Caesar, and also if we see how it's right as a word Allah or here, and we can see the dots are lost. So the dots are sometimes very small. Sometimes, in some cases, they are not be visible or be omitted. And this phenomenon we will come back later also. And another major format I just mentioned in the first picture of the Quranic manuscript, it's this 30 volume arrangement. And the illuminated or decorated opening typically feature 3 lines of text. And sometimes also this illumination, this decorated page also can be found in the ending volume of the manuscript. And this example also is copied by a person with Nisba al-Sini. And he copied it in the Great Mosque of Hanbalik. And Hanbalik is a Mongol name of nowadays Beijing. And the Arabic writing is distinguished by the slender vertical strokes with head serifs, as well as flattened and elongated sublinear strokes. So this style, as agreed by many scholars now, is comparable to Muhaka. And however, if we compare it to the Muhaka from the Central Asia, we also find some difference. For example, I found to compare the Muhaka from this one probably from Iran or Turkey. The Ming is differently written in the end of the verse, and we will find if we look more of a Quran copied in China, we find this Muhaka is keep standardizations. So we can see in this type of writing, like the aleph, lam, and the emphasis on the flattened sublinear strokes, is going through on different Quranic manuscripts who each dated after 15th century, copied in China. And they also have a similar banding. Usually they are covered with blue cloth, and the manuscript dimension is also similar, usually measuring around it between 25 to 30 in height, centimeters in height, and around 20 centimeters in width. The remark. So I show the last page is I spatially show these pages that, so then you will understand the paper to use in the Quran copied in China. It's a special way to making how at least this case it's attached several paper together to make this paper stronger, because sometimes we will call. Many scholars will call the paper from China Chinese paper, but actually papers in China is made from different material. It can be made from bamboo, can be made from different trees, and even can mixture with clothes. So what we call Chinese paper here. And so for many papers produced in China for traditional Chinese painting are very thin. They are not useful to write, and they are not smooth enough to write a Quran. So so this is one way to make the paper stronger, to attach two, three paper together and to write Quranic verses on top of it. And there are also many other Islamic manuscripts in China, including hadith, praying books, Sufi texts, and so on. So I show two cases to see other Islamic manuscripts associated with Sinophone Muslim. And this manuscript can be multilingual. For example, the left one is a Buddha manuscript. And this Buddha manuscript is a Tahmid version, and with a Persian translation, and also even with an annotation in Chinese. But this type of Chinese written in the left manuscript is a Chinese written in Arabic script, because the person doesn't speak Chinese. They speak Chinese, but they doesn't write Chinese characters. So they write Chinese into Arabic script, like this Ajami phenomenon in China. And also the manuscript on the right is a funeral praying book containing both Chinese and Arabic, of course. And Arabic handwriting in these manuscripts, we can see is a different style. However, we also can recognize a kind of flattened strokes going through them, with especially sublinear strokes, like Ming, while even for this one, I will not for the right side the manuscript, which we can rarely call it Muhaka, but we can see the Ming and Ra and Wa. These strokes are quite flattened and elongated. And but for the left case I show here, we still can send some like a Muhaka character inside this writing. So all these manuscripts I show, both these two Islamic manuscripts and also Quranic manuscripts, they are probably written with a galam, not with a brush. So we can see this free thing or these vertical lines, and with the serifs. And but if there are any brush or local tools are used to write Arabic in China, yes, actually yes. So if we see a brush is come to write Arabic, different effects emerged. So for a brush, how it works is a soft. The tip is very soft. When it touches the paper with the tip, it allows the calligrapher to control the speed and pressure and results the variation into the strokes. The example I show here is probably written by a brush. So it's part of a pilgrimage scroll made by a Chinese Muslim in 19th century. I just show a part of it, and we can see the Arabic writings here displays pronounced undulations, and the aleph and the lam is inclined to the left, and the shafts tapered dramatically from very thick to thin. And many of them have the hairlines in the ending. And so these effects, especially if we close to look at the inks, they are going out a little bit out of the edge of letters. And it suggests that mostly likely not written by a galam, but instead a brush, how it affects on a paper. And so when I see the one, so we can see when the material changed, when the writing tool from galam changed to brush, more effects or more dialogues we can see from the Chinese side going to the outcome of the Arabic calligraphy here. And then I want to talk another big tradition of Arabic writing actually can be connected to manuscript. And it's another very important major writing, what we nowadays people will think Sini calligraphy, like what I just showed in the beginning of the talk, is this Arabic calligraphy found in the mosques. And I want to go through into one mosque as an example, because in my opinion, to understand this kind of calligraphy, we should understand also the space, how they use them. And so when we go into the mosque, I get this example I took is also in Tianjin, the Great Mosque of Tianjin. And when we enter the courtyard, the left one is a courtyard. We encounter architecture has a ridged roof, very like Chinese buildings, like a temple or palace. And then we move towards the steps and leading to the praying hall. Several horizontal plaques inscribed in Chinese come to a view of the gate. So we can see many these Chinese plaques into the gate. The text typically convey Islamic themes. For example, the right photo I show here above the doorway is a large gilded plaque inscribed in Chinese reads 清真无二, which means the pure and the true, the one without equal. In the courtyard, usually we see a very little Arabic in the space. The only Arabic in this space I show here is on the front gate. There's a 3 inscription in a wooden panel in gilded. These gilded inscription are in Arabic. But if we go inside to the praying hall, the praying hall is richly adorned with Arabic inscriptions. And the very interesting form is the couplet. The couplet is on the columns here. And the couplet designed into the shape of Chinese characters. And they're put in a line up a central path leading to the mihrab chamber at the west end of the hall. And the horizontal inscription panel was seated on the top of each gate. Behind a finely crafted wood screen lines the mihrab itself. In front of the mihrab is an open space, illuminated ceiling window. So that's the right photo. It's a mihrab space of a Chinese mosque, usually in the end of the building. And we can see the light is coming down from the ceiling window in front of the space. And we can see the 2 times Bismillah Rahman Rahim is under the window. And it's very common to see they put the Basmala in the highest space in a mosque. It's like what people do in a manuscript. So that's the idea of how they use a space with Arabic calligraphy in a holy space for praying. And if we look at the mihrab panel, it is set up on an altar and featured gilded inscription. And this base of altar resembles the form of architectural plinths in China. And the overall visual arrangement of this mosque resembles many elements we find in other Chinese religious buildings. For example, I just show another example, like how your Confucius temple in China should be look like. They also use a lot of wooden plaques with writings, with altar in the end of the hall. And but for the Chinese Muslims, they change also the words into Arabic calligraphy, and especially the altar. Of course, they don't have a figure of Confucius. They put Arabic writing there in the to make the most holy space in the whole mosque architecture design. And then I go closer to the altar, to the mihrab. And the overall program of the Arabic writing on the mihrab is highly symmetry, with the inscription fully arranged, carefully arranged within defined frames here. So in the middle of the frames, a circle frame, and we can read Alhamdulillah on the top. And also, and another circle is read Innama Allah, and how say it's like what many people know, like Sini calligraphy look like. So many words are not necessarily connected, but actually historically it's already appeared. It's not it's not really new, or it's not a recent practice. If we find and I find a comparable example already in the epigraphy in Quanzhou. In a tombstone in Quanzhou, we can see a shahada which put on the top of it, also arranged on a circle, can be reflected to the mosque design, and also he put the design which is important to the whole, symbolically important. So they put it on top of the tomb. That's the idea I want to show this example here. It's like what we think the Sini calligraphy is not fully, it's a contemporary Chinese Muslim calligraphers. They drive the idea as early as the official evidence you can find in the tombstones to 14th century, 13th century. They use into new designs in the official language there. And another typical form we can find in mosque is a basmala, and used in the horizontal panel. And its overall composition also again is symmetrical and enclosed on the both left and right side. And the this triangle structure is announced by the vertical strokes like a lamb rising up in the center. And this Bismillah Rahman Rahim we can also find in the manuscript around connecting to Chinese Muslim. So they have this practice we can see in architecture, also in the flying page of the manuscript. And in addition of the Arabic inscription carved and gilded into wooden surface, another form of calligraphy is frequently used in mosque. It is on paper scroll into Chinese style frame. And this photo is taken in Shanghai, in a mosque in Shanghai. And but this scroll you can find in many space, also including living space of Chinese Muslims. They put in their reception hall for their family, and also in the mosque. And contemporary calligraphers like Haji Nuddin, they write a lot of calligraphy like that. And then this sitting in Chinese architecture is called zhongtang. If it's not a Muslim context, many Chinese families are using Chinese paintings and Chinese calligraphy instead of that. So, and how we can read it is not really easy to read. And so but this one, for example, in the middle is a read Ya Rahmat Allah, and this word Allah is written twice in order to achieve symmetry. So that's the idea. They really want to make it artistically achievement. So it's sometimes the words are repeated, and so it's many design idea, and how they put the word into the looks like a square. It's an idea to close to Chinese characters, and I will like show another example of that. So first is we can see how to read the calligraphy here, and this calligraphy is written Wa Ma Yasturun, and the dominant vertical line is this Aleph of Ma, and which in the middle, and the first Wa appear on the right, and the tails elongated upwards, and the letter Ya and Ta are written downwards alongside the X of the Aleph, and the Nun is like a ball on the bottom. So that's why it's written on the first, like going up like a kind of a robot or tails on top set, and then go down, make it symmetry. But if you don't know how they write it, it's really a bit difficult to understand, because it doesn't write from right to the left. It's going around in different directions to make it more like a pattern. So several things can be said to this kind of calligraphy. So the Aleph, or the vertical line in the middle, and the very symmetrical composition, and the fragmented broken letters, and the ominate of dots, and also the tails is really the wall is very decorative. And the tools to write this calligraphy is not galam. It's not what we know galam with a reed pen or Chinese brush. It's kind of a new tool. And this new tool is like made from a rattan. So what I show here. So it's so this kind of that's why it has this effect with the black and white together to create this kind of effects in Chinese called fei bai, flying white. And this flying white effects is a technique commonly used in a cursive calligraphy in China and Japan. And this, and also another tools can be used is not from rattan, but use is a wooden plate and say warped with a cloth to write this kind of writings. It affects smooth of the lines, and which can have the white in between the ink. And the fei bai effect is a very typical stroke type in Chinese painting and calligraphy, started already in Tang Dynasty, meaning the white space among the ink strokes, like we see how they write the first character here. The character means phoenix, so that's why it looks like a bit flying. But it's a writing already starting 8th century, a kind of effects. And this effects of ink writing is connecting to the Chinese philosophy, like how they balance emptiness and solidity. And another example, we can see this Ya al-Baqi, also written with this the two dots. The dot of Ya and the dot of Kaf is shared. That's why they have many ideas to how they omit the dots or share the dots to make it in kind of artistic design. And then this kind of idea to write in vertically, we also can find again in manuscript. This manuscript is dated to the second half of the 18th century. I didn't date it, but it's at least a date from the collection. And we also can see the read Subhanallah, and the dot of Nu and Ba are omitted, and instead they are stylized like a lightning-like form, like here. The dots there. So dots is also a trick to changing this type of writing. But we can see the left one is use this the tool from rattan, and the right one didn't use a tool. We can see the technique is fill the ink. They just paint it. They design and paint it with ink. And to bit fun, not fun, but just to show you how to read or how we can understand a couplet writing of calligraphy here. And that is another type of scroll writing. And we can see it's a Quranic verses from Surah 99. And first it's Famen and Wamen. These two fa and these two words, very close words, they write very different design of these cursive, very curvilinear lines. And then in order to make it in a square shape, the first word Famen appear again in next line, Famen Yamal, and then it's become to a square. That's a sorry. So it's a design idea how to make it into square. So sometimes they repeat the word, they eliminate all the dots, and then sometimes one square is just one word. Sometimes one square can be two words, and to make it more symmetrical. And this pattern are repeated actually. So one calligrapher write it, maybe next one is copied the similar design follow his master. So therefore I want to suggest that Sini calligraphic work can be understood through three interconnected layers. The first layer is the script itself. Here we can observe two common phenomena. In some cases, the later form consciously imitates the shape of Chinese character. In most cases, however, the scripts are characterized by missing dots and by flexible, elongated ascender and descender strokes. The second layer is the material form of the presentation. That is the form in which the calligraphy, how it displayed, such as in the couplet or the horizontal banner. And the third layer is the Islamic theme of the text, which close to the ritual practice and social life of the local Muslim community. And accompanying Muslim migration to China, Arabic writing has been present for nearly 1,000 years, even can be longer. And when we ask what Sini calligraphy is, we must consider whether it is primarily a geographical definition or an aesthetical category. Historical evidence, like what I presented from epigraphy from the Quranic manuscript, and to the calligraphy, how we see in the architecture, that word Sini functional more like an umbrella term of geography rather than a single unified style. Manuscripts and calligraphic work produced in China demonstrate a range of relation with Chinese aesthetic tradition rather than a consistent visual language. The Islamic manuscript, especially Quran copied in China, already exhibit considerable variation in writing styles, but still we can see some certain features shared between them, the flattened strokes associated with muhakka. And at the same time, the stylized scripts reveal only a limited connection to Chinese writing culture. But if we change to another tool, to the brush, to the rattan, we can find a more visually connection to Chinese character. And then we can see the transmedian quality between all the materials. So I show so many different materials from the epigraphic stone tombs, from the manuscript, from the architecture, we can see this the calligraphic works travels from the ornamental writing in manuscripts. They can use again in the architecture, and also the vertical design in what we find in scroll writing is again we can see in a manuscript. So that suggests that as a contemporary writing of Sini calligraphy, we can trace the historical root of them. Also, the artists, they are learning from the history, they are learning from the language, how they collected this visual language from the historical heritage in China. And in this way, Sini calligraphy engage with Chinese art in different layers. In the last PowerPoint, I see the different layers, and from the material, technique, and the spatial context. That's what I want to suggest, like what we sitting here to discuss today, how trans culture can happen in different cultures from Islamic culture as far as to China. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shunhua. That was very interesting, very enlightening. May I kindly ask you to stay in the, take whichever seat you want, the middle one or this one? Sure. And may I kindly ask Professor Peter Klaus to join us on the podium. We have around 20 minutes left for discussion, and we'll utilize that time to receive some questions or comments, whoever wants to get involved. Well, we have the first question. There will be a mic circulating over there.
I saw the influence of Islamic art on European, especially what Dr. Klaus mentioned about the covers of the books. Now we saw how the Islamic art influenced the European art, but I didn't see how Islamic art influenced the mainstream Chinese art. I saw only these are Muslims, Chinese, or it's Islamic art. But what's the relation between the mainstream non-Muslim Chinese art? I didn't see anything. The other question for Professor Klaus, because Islam banned the figurative art, so the Islamic art was limited to abstract and calligraphy only. So it was deprived of theater and sculptures and other form of arts. But it made it unique feature for Islamic art in all the world. That is the only art which is abstract, geometric forms. Is that a good thing or bad thing? Is it a curse or blessing?
Yeah, actually it's a question, what is Islamic art? Islamic art is so diverse. So how Islamic art actually Islamic art in China, it's how it can, in my understanding of the topic I understand, it's for this impact, the Muslim immigrant to China is already an impact to the Chinese culture in as a whole, because it makes the Chinese culture into a multi-religious, a multicultural space. And I think it makes sense. They use local tools, they use local material to create their heritage devoted to the religion. So and it's difficult to say how Islamic art doesn't affect the Chinese art. For example, to my knowledge, like what I show, the astronomy manuscript and to the Mongol prince in China, it is a kind of transculture or effect to added to the knowledge to the Chinese society, and also, for example, for in China, they also have the printed book in Arabic script, even in 19th century. But from the material aspect, I think it's a bit difficult to say how it can be on stand, they want to use some material from Central Asia to the Man society. But I don't know if I answer this question in some way, because I think it's a good question, but it's not specific to announced in the topic I talked today, like Arabic writings. Thank you.
Mr. Klaus?
Well, yes, as Shunhua said already, the Islamic art is a cosmos over many different styles and over many periods. And if you consider European art as a cosmos where we have figurative arts and we have the informal art or the non-figurative in many parts of it, not only in the applied arts, but also in depicting the unknown, for example, the chaotic. You find this in manuscripts of the Roman period, of the Roman early Middle Ages, and so on. And I think it is very hard to evaluate or to qualify what is good and bad in the arts. I wouldn't say so, but it becomes old-fashioned to be only figurative. In Europe, it took quite a long time until the end of the 19th or the beginning of the 20th century that one understood there's something after the figurative. As for the subject I was presenting, I think this is a unique case that over such a long period, elements of an impact which we can observe when it introduced into the late Gothic art remains until the 19th century and even longer, if one says so. It's a unique way, but in the arts there are several strange, unique experiences and experiments. In the experiments, I think we would see especially the intense idea of the artist to create something new, something overwhelming in the visual and the emotional experience of arts. I think this is also happening in China, not with calligraphy, but if you look into Yuan or Ming period porcelain, there are several Iranian elements appearing, and there have been many studies on this. It is quite evident that the Mongol period opened the art expressions also in China for certain reasons, perhaps not for the Chinese original or non-Muslim population, perhaps for the court and for export, as I heard. The blue color, for example, which is not liked so much, and that's good for the West. I don't want to qualify it, but there's perhaps a certain dislike of periods of the arts to be heard behind this idea. And also Europe has dislikes. For example, with the expression of Islamic, there would have been difficulties in calling it Islamic ornament in the book arts. Arabic doesn't matter. That's a flexible term. Moresque is nearly a European term, not so much an Arabic term, and it's the way how the impact and the ideas which were rising from the Islamic world to European arts shows the way, the path it made until it arrives in Europe.
Please.
Thank you, Klaus, for reminding me. Then I can add so I can answer a little bit more about the questions. Exactly like the blue and white porcelain in China is the first for the Islamic market, and like the Mamluk shape of the candle stand is affects to Chinese porcelain. So from the material aspect, we can also see many examples in China. Not like what I showed today. The topic today is Arabic writings in China. So I was simplistically, maybe a bit simplistically think Arabic writing itself is some effects in China, because in China we don't write Arabic. So it itself can say it's an impact.
It's very interesting to see the impact of Arabic civilization, Islamic civilization on the West, how they got inspired in their sacred books, but they kept to some rules of the calligraphy, in different schools of calligraphy. While in China, they were completely free. They're not even following, it's like impressionist, or abstract art. I mean, I couldn't read the Sini script. So there's no punctuation, or it's just the flow of the letters, like in your Chinese, sort of calligraphy or inscription. So it was interesting. How can they read? I mean, for an Arab or a Muslim to be able to read all the letters without any sort of punctuations, it's sort of flowing, very interesting actually. And there was this, actually my friend asked also, there was on that column, the bamboo column with all the letters surrounding it, a red sign. What does it mean? Which one? The one with the long, and then all the letters was sort of surrounding it like a flowing without any punctuation, and then you just put a wow here and wow here, and then one on top.
Yeah, so it's they started with wa here.
The red one here.
Yeah, so started with the wa here in the right side. So they still started the right side to the left side, but then they have the and then started on the top, and then so it's a little bit complicated.
That sign of the red one, does it mean anything?
So Yasturun. So it's a Ma Yasturun.
Yeah, I know, but what is that red one?
No, the red one I put here to be in order to.
Okay.
So it's my sorry, I want. Yes, I want to explain how they write.
Very interesting, actually. It's flowing. So it's like impressionist, like a modern art. I don't see any rules of calligraphy in this.
Yeah, so that's why I show these two traditions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yasmin, please, if you just kindly, I forgot to mention, if you introduce yourself, please, for the sake of the recording.
Okay, Yasmin Farid, Cambridge University Library and Federist. So, thank you for both your presentations. Very interesting. In fact, I have just come across a manuscript we have in Cambridge, which is a Chinese book with a Chinese binding on Chinese paper, but Arabic writing on it. And I was looking at it with a student, and he was saying this is Sini, and so I was very interested actually in your talk. But it's obvious, and you mentioned that Sini is more of a geographic description, a bit like Maghrebi, and in a way I would even say Kufic somehow. Kufic is maybe not geographic, but it varies, the styles vary so much that they put together don't really deserve to be put in one category. So I was wondering, do you know of anyone, or are you working on perhaps looking at a new classification within the Sini or in addition to it?
Actually, a new book is preparing with a colleague. I'm writing one chapter of Tahmis Buddha, and I was saying so, and also another colleague writing a chapter. They call it Muhaka Sini to cause this Muhaka writing for the Quran. So for the Quran, is a Chinese Quran. It's the Muhaka is used frequently, and this Muhaka is more distinguished or distinctive characters of all Sini writings. So for this case, for this typical case of Quran, probably can be named like Muhaka Sini. But for many cases, like I was showing many manuscripts in China, it's difficult to categorize how is it. It's between, sometimes it's between Naskh and between Muhaka. And sometimes we can see the influence like from India, like sorry. Oh, sorry. Oh, I want to show the manuscript. For example, this Tahmis here. So it's can be close to be Muhaka, but the difference is the ending of the sublinear stroke is become thicker, and it's much more. It's not so wide spaced like Muhaka, and it's more, how to say, it's shorter. The vertical space is shorter than Muhaka, and so it's for me it's like some influence from India.
Bahari.
Yeah, Bahari. But we cannot say Bahari is spaced, so it's difficult to be category.
So, I mean, as long as they have resemblances to already known styles, but you also showed some which are really different and perhaps unique to Chinese.
Which one?
The later ones. But, I mean, it's fine.
Oh, yeah. No, we can discuss more, yes. Sorry.
Okay. Adnan, please.
So thank you very much for both the presentations. I had questions for both. The first question, Professor, is I found it fascinating on one of the slides where you showed that there was sort of repetition of Faman as a sort of for artistic reasons, right? And I thought that was interesting in that typically there's usually some reservation about sort of alterations within any type of Quranic text, and so taking artistic license there. So I was just curious, is that a common practice to sort of take within kind of Chinese Islamic art to take some artistic license and in some respects alter the Quranic text for that purpose? So that I was curious about that. Professor Klaus, I'm curious within sort of the book cover tradition and sort of the extent to which this European tradition is borrowing or influenced by Islamic tradition. Are they following it as sort of as the trends develop in the Islamic world? Are they sort of staying in line with that as kind of, oh, well, this is fashion there now, so now it'll be fashion here? Or do they sort of, do they take older styles at a point where that's become outdated in the Islamic world? Like, to what extent are they kind of trending with regard to the Islamic world?
Shunhua, please.
Yeah, thank you for your question, and I don't need to show probably. And it's this making to you mean repeated and making artistic style.
Yeah, when it's not repeated in the text itself, but they're repeating it in order to allow for that square structure. That's part of Chinese art.
Yeah, to make it symmetry. Like another one I show is can be write 2 times Allah to make symmetry. So it's a kind of, I think it's common practice of the Sini calligraphy here. And but this practice can be relatively new to 20th century because first I encountered with Sini calligraphy. I only see the contemporary practice like dated to early 20th century or even 1950s artist piece, and then I find from the collection from Harvard University, they have the to the early 20th century, they already have the Sini calligraphy or even lithography of this type of writing. And then, but in that collection, I didn't find the, and this one. So I want to show the one. Oh, sorry, I don't know how to control it. So for this one, actually, it's from the Harvard collection. So it means early 20th century, they have already this repeated way to write, make it artistic. That's actually earliest so far I found in historical archive of Sini calligraphy.
Thank you, Shunhua. Professor?
Sorry. Yes, thank you. Well, may I add, in writing, it's not used to repeat words, of course, but in recitation, you get used to repetitions for intensifying. That is allowed, not for the codification. It's a very interesting appearance, I think. Yes, and I must excuse myself, I was showing too many slides, and so I could not come to the case that actually it was only the period of the 15th and early 16th century style of Islamic covers, which was influencing the European artists, and they continued themselves. I had the own development of this transmission in Europe, showing always again some features, but still from the 15th, 16th century origins. And it stops there. In the 19th century, there are new arabesque styles repeating, especially when the Iranian art became known through the World Exhibition here in London. Since 1850s, this was influencing many applied art styles. But in between, one had made use of it as a European style of its own in Islamic, Arabic, Maghrebinian garment. Yes, you are right. This is a difference.
Thank you. Michael?
Thank you very much to both of you for taking us across Eurasia and showing us the influence of Islamic art on multiple traditions. And my question is for Klaus, and particularly the source of that inspiration in Europe. Is it an issue of a trade in goods and an inspiration based on goods, or is there also a movement of people and of artisans and craftspeople who come from Islamic countries to European centers and bring with them crafts and knowledge?
Well, this is a very difficult discussion going on since quite a while. There are some new studies, especially about the role of Venice and some fewer North Italian cities, whether they have really housed ateliers where Ottomans, Turks or Muslims or non-Muslims were working. Until we can't convince Alison to write another book with her very intensive look into details, we can't decide on this. I have tried to make out some styles typical for Venice, which are different from the Ottoman style. I think I have found some, but I wouldn't dare show them to this audience. They would immediately tell me of an example of a book in Cambridge Library or in British Museum, which shows the opposite argument. It's so difficult, and one needs a lot of time to do this. And as I said in the beginning, it is one of the subjects less studied, unfortunately, but it would be a very interesting example to what extent the artists were receiving and remembering ideas. And I think artists have an enormous, tremendous memory, not only for lines and ornaments and motifs, but especially for the structure and for the structuring and composition of spaces and support spaces. Yes.
Please, Madam Faisal, the mic, please.
Very curious, in the Chinese Muslims, for example, when they read, obviously they can read the Quran, no? So they can? No? Yeah. Because, in the Arabic calligraphy, one letter or several letters, if you don't put the punctuation, it has many different meanings, like the ha or f or or ba, or it can have a different meaning. So I'm very curious to know whether they read the Quran in Chinese or in Arabic, or how do they read it?
They read Quran in both language, Chinese and Arabic. Actually, the Chinese translation of Quran appeared not so early in China. So many Muslims, they're reading Quran in Arabic. And for example, this calligraphy is written especially by the imam in the mosques. And the students to study Quran inside the mosque with Arabic language, and they don't have punctuals here. It's only for this kind of ornamental writing. It's not for other books for reading. No, and actually, for me, it's very hard to read. And if I don't read it, I ask a calligrapher to read it, because they know how to read it, because they already remember the pattern. So I asked Haji Nuddin if I don't know, as a calligrapher I know from China, if I went to a mosque, I'm curious, I cannot figure out in the end, and I ask them to help me. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, if there is no further question, I think we might close by this. Please join me in thanking Professor Claus-Peter Haase and Dr. Shunhua Jin for such an interesting presentation and taking us into this amazing world of art. It has been a great pleasure to have all of you, each and every one of you. We have been delighted tonight to have among us a group of scholars. This event tonight has been parallel with another event that has been running from the morning today, so it has been a long day. Many researchers and scholars that we have been discussing all the day. We'll continue the discussion tomorrow on the AI and how it can be utilized, the artificial intelligence in, expanding these studies on manuscripts and different spheres of manuscripts, which is very, very exciting for us. Obviously, I won't forget to thank our special guest tonight, Baroness Gloria Hooper. She's an old friend of the foundation and the family, so thank you so much. It was a great pleasure to have you. And thank you to each and every one of you for being part of this event tonight. We do look forward to have you in our future events. I think we are 5 minutes late from the schedule, but yeah, I hope you have a safe return back home, and please follow up our activities. We'll keep you posted on our future events, and thank you so much to the Al-Furqan team for bringing and putting everything together, the earlier event, tonight's event, and continuing tomorrow. Wish us luck, and we wish you luck in everything that you do, and we hope to see you again in our future events. Thank you so much, and have a nice evening. Thank you.